President-elect Donald Trump says getting better trade deals that focus on America first is one of his top priorities as president. Now he is setting his sights on new negotiations with China. But many economists are predicting that he could set off a trade war that could ultimately devastate the middle class.
China threatened to cut supplies of iPhones, cars, and other goods in response to President-elect Donald Trump's aggressive campaign promises to tax Chinese products.
The new president will be condemned for his recklessness, ignorance, and incompetence, and bear all the consequences. We are very suspicious the trade war scenario is a trap set up by some American media to trip up the new president.
The government's first warning against a trade war came the same day that Chinese President Xi Jinping congratulated Trump on his election victory. Reports indicate the two leaders amicably discussed the future of bilateral trade during the conversation.
The U.S. and China can achieve mutual beneficial and win-win results. Donald Trump said he is willing to meet halfway to enhance U.S.-China cooperations. He added he believes U.S. and China relations can definitely achieve greater development.
However, Trump stumped long and hard against Chinese currency manipulation, vowing to place 45% tariffs on imports on the country he accused of cheating.
You look at what China is doing to our country in terms of making our product. They're devaluing their currency, and there's nobody in our government to fight them.
In 2015, trade between the two countries reached nearly $660 billion. But tariffs on either side could disrupt supply chains around the globe. Now the world's number one and number two economies may be set for a trade and currency showdown.
We're joined now live in studio by Tal Reshef, a consultant and expert on the Asian economy. We're also joined by Neve Ellis, who is an editor at the Asia Times. Certainly a lot to digest there. Neve, let's start with you. Trump in the debates and also in a lot of his campaign speeches, he was fond of using the phrase that China is a currency manipulator. In layman's terms, what does that really mean, and what is he trying to convey to middle-class America when he says that?
Exactly what it does is that it has a government coming in and making it so that their currency is weaker or stronger in order to adjust how trade works. So basically, if their currency is weaker, it's much better for them when they're competing on the global stage. It's more difficult for Americans to compete with them. And he's basically saying that they're making the rules of the game unfair.
Is there truth to this, though? I mean, is he claiming this? Is this what's happening, in effect?
It's something that used to be very true, and I think that if you look back 6-10 years, then you can see that, yeah, their currency was really undervalued, and there was really no question about that. But the fact of the matter is that over the last couple of years, that's changed, and now economists say that if it's undervalued, it's very slightly undervalued, and others argue that it might even be overvalued. They've actually taken a lot of steps. So in some regards, that criticism is a little bit out of date.
All right, and Tal, Trump will take the oath of office in really just a few weeks. He'll be the president of the United States, and he is setting his sights on trade and China. What tools does he have at his disposal in order to try and gain leverage against China?
Well, he has one major tool, and this is the import and export balance between the two countries. America is importing from China much more than China is importing from America.
A 4-to-1 ratio.
Yeah, it's huge. It's really huge, especially when we remember that we are talking about the two biggest economies in the world. So the volume of trade between them is quite immense. And what he can do is if he puts taxes and China fights it back by putting taxes, his taxes will be more effective, but this is not the only tool in the arena.
Do you agree? Is that, I mean, basically sums it up?
Right. I mean, the real tools that they have are tariffs, imposing tariffs. And as we heard in the video, you know, that risks starting a trade war. As soon as you say, you know what, I'm going to fight this by taxing your products and making it more difficult for you to sell them, then they'll say, oh, well, we're going to do the same thing to you.
Right. And there is a specific example, even from recent history. Know that President Obama, at the start of his presidency, he imposed a 35% tariff on the importation of Chinese tires, a way of trying to protect the American automotive industry. China responded. They added a tariff on American cars and automotive products, and then they added a tariff on American meat and chicken meat.
Yeah.
So that's a small example. I mean, is that the kind kind of thing that may happen in the Trump presidency where things can spiral very quickly and the impact of that.
That's exactly it. And the idea is that that might not happen just on one product or two products. It might be on a large range of products. It might be across the board. That's the fear. And what happened with that specific example, they say that, oh, in the tire industry, it looks like the United States managed to add or preserve something like 1,200 jobs, but those cost the United States $900,000 each, and it lost 2,500 jobs in other sectors as a result. So it's one of these things that it might sound like it's good, it might feel like it's good, but the broader repercussions are actually quite bad to consumers and to other job seekers.
Tal, do you think that President-elect Trump understands that? He gets the numbers. He always promotes his business expertise, and he'll have a business acumen that's been lacking in Washington, D.C. Does he get it, and he's just trying to show a strong hand because they don't have the same ability in terms of economic strength that China has, I mean, in terms of leveraging over the United States?
Yeah, I think that he misses the big picture. It's true that the balance is giving more effectivity to the part of America in what we have just mentioned, but there are other tools in the arena, as I just said. First of all, China has got surplus reserves of nearly $4 trillion, $4,000 billion. America is in
that's a huge number. I mean, just
it's hard to understand.
Trillion with a T.
Yeah. Yes, $4,000 billion.
Yeah.
Now, and America doesn't have these reserves. On the contrary, America is in a deficit, in a debt. So when a war erupts and each one of them is entering into this or that kind of a decrease in the economic activity, China has got much more way to go before they start suffering from this. America will face the difficulties much quicker, nearly immediately. This is one thing. The second thing is even more severe. Among those $4 trillion, nearly, we have nearly $1 trillion held by hands of Chinese of American bonds. If they cash it out, and they don't have to cash all the $1 trillion together, $100 billion each time, they put America in an impossible situation very quickly without even raising taxes.
Although they also have some disincentive for doing that, because the moment they do that, the value of all of that they're holding drops dramatically. So even though it's like many of these things, it's almost a mutually assured destruction. You know, that they say, oh, you have to pay up right now, but then again, we don't have these IOUs anymore. They've lost all their value.
Right. All right, so last question. Let's talk a little bit about what we expect to happen. Realistically, do you think a trade war is imminent? And then just touch quickly on the consequences of what could happen in the Trump presidency if that happens.
You know, Trump has quite a broad array of options in front of him, but there are some limitations that are there as well. So he might need the cooperation of Congress if he wants to do some of these things. On the other hand, there are avenues that he can take, and some of these things that he wants to do are sort of unprecedented. So it might even end up going through the courts to decide if he has the authority. Right. So there are a lot of big question marks about what he has the ability to do.
All right, we'll certainly have to stay tuned for. He says this is one of his biggest priorities, and I know a lot of it does require congressional approval. He wants to have tariffs 45%. You know, who knows what he can do.
When we are analyzing the promises that he gave during the campaign, we have to remember that he promised war with almost all the world, including all the allies of America. Now, it's clear that he's not in the position of fighting everybody, and sooner or later he will have to give up some of the promises. The question is what promises he will give up, and this is a question of psychology. I'm not even sure that Mr. Trump himself can answer this question.
We'll wait and see. Guys, thank you so much for being with us in studio. We appreciate your analysis on this very important issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.